The Prix Galien is a welcome initiative to stimulate creative research and promote excellence. Barack Obama. The Galien Awards ceremony is considered the equivalent of the Oscars night for the innovators in the labs and awards every year the best pharmaceutical product, the best biotechnology product, the best medical technology, and the best digital health product.
This is the right event, on the right issue, at the right time.
I thank His Excellency, the President, for bringing Prix Galien to Africa, and I look forward to the day when we will celebrate an African winner of the Prix Galien.
I'm particularly grateful to receive this award.
The awards are among the highest honors in science and commerce because they lead to improvement in the human condition.
The Prix Galien Awards recognize the world's brightest minds and most innovative companies. They are a true celebration of the hard work required to produce life-changing interventions.
That is what makes us optimistic about the future.
Congratulations to all of you.
Make a difference. Join the Galien Foundation. The Galien Week of Innovation has been made possible thanks to our precious friends and partners who share the Galien Foundation's values. First off, the two exclusive platinum partners are We would now like to acknowledge our two gold partners. Furthermore, we proudly introduce our corporate leaders partners. The associate partners are the grantors are To conclude, we are extremely fortunate to work with outstanding media partners who have contributed to the Galien Foundation's renown.
Welcome, everyone. On behalf of the Galien Foundation and the Digital Health Section Chair, Bernard Pousseau, I welcome you to this webinar, the first in a series of webinars throughout the week that are dedicated to health innovation. As you've just seen from this dramatic video, the Galien Foundation and the Prix Galien honor exceptional innovation that can improve the human condition. I extend my thanks to the Secretary General and Chair, Bruno Cohen, who is really the leader of this magnificent movement, and also to the committees that select amongst countless submissions, the best of the best. Today, we're going to hear from six of those honorees, those nominees, who are outstanding global leaders in the area of digital health. And I'll introduce them in just a moment. Let me tell you just a little bit more about this week at Galien. We have seminars or webinars throughout the week that are virtual. On Thursday, we'll converge at the Alexandria Life Sciences Center for a full day forum that starts in the morning. It ends in the afternoon. Amazing speakers, leaders of enterprises. Of course, we're going to be fortunate to hear from Dr. Fauci and Chair of Merck, Ken Frazier. And then that evening at the Museum of Natural History, all of the nominees, all of the community will gather at the Museum of Natural History and will learn who the Prix Galien Award recipients are. Let me tell you a little bit about this panel, and then I want to introduce the panelists themselves. We're going to enter into a stimulating conversation about the future of digital health and the meaning of digital health, how it impacts people's lives. Digital health funding continues to break records in 2021. It's been a blockbuster year in funding. Actually, it's been 3 of the highest funding quarters ever in the history of digital health. In second quarter of this year, we saw $8.2 billion invested in the category. And while Q3 saw a slight decrease, every indication is that this quarter will pick up again and we'll see an outstanding year of investment in this category. Why? Why is that? We have a very fragmented health ecosystem around the world. We have a myriad of players, but there's no doubt that the 6 leaders we're going to hear from today, they have a better idea how to connect the system, how to pull those puzzle pieces together, how to bring in diversity and inclusion, how to make sure that the patient is at the table. And why? It's their table. It's their table. We do this to ensure people have access to exceptional care. And the 6 leaders we have today are examples of that. So in a second, I'm going to introduce the panelists, our pre-Galien nominees. But before I do that, I'd like to invite all of our participants today to take part in a poll. All the panels throughout the week are participating in the same poll. We'll see the aggregate at the end of the week. The poll is up. Take just a few moments. You're going to be asked in the poll, what are the most promising new medical advances that you will likely see between the next 5 to 10 years? You have one choice. Obviously, it's a very educated audience, so we ask you to take advantage of this and vote. The panelists themselves, I am unable to vote. It's your choice. Let's give that a moment, please. Thank you to our staff at Galien. I think that the panel is complete, and I think we can go right into our conversation. Thank you very much. Let me introduce our panelists today, and they're more than panelists. These are pre-Galien finalists. They represent the best of the best in the world of digital health. I'm going to introduce them in alphabetical order by their last name. We have with us Dr. Albert. He's the founder and chief medical officer of Livecore. It's a dynamic US headquartered company. In a few moments, Dr. Albert will tell you a bit about what he's doing. We have also with us Dr. Anne Bruvels. She's the chief executive officer of PX Healthcare. We have Mette Deinberg, the founder and CEO of MyMe. We have Mark Julian, the co-CEO of Dibeloop. We have Matthew Leclerc-Chalvet. He's the chief executive officer of Therapixel. We have Alison Holland. Alison Holland is with us today. Thank you. She's a executive officer of Mediball, and I want to extend our thanks to Mediball and also the Alexandria Life Science Center for being premier sponsors of Galien, and Antoine Rodrigue, who's the CEO of Modjaw. These are exceptional leaders. We'll hear a little bit about what they're doing, and then we're going to go into a very, very engaged conversation about the struggles, the opportunities, the path ahead for digital health. Let me start first with Dr. Albert. Dr. Albert, could you just share with us a bit about what you and Livecore are doing?
Well, thank you, Gil. Livecore is, and I am literally, figuratively, and literally the old man of digital health. Livecore was founded in 2011, and today in 40 countries around the world, we bring both patients and physicians together by their heart. And we're the pioneer of personal ECG monitoring, and have seen now over 175 publications around the world validating what we do.
Thank you so much for that, and continued success. Dr. Anne Bruvels, who's the Chief Executive Officer of PX Healthcare. Anne, could you share a bit about what you and your company are doing?
Yes, of course. We work at alleviating the problems around cancer care. We know it affects around 1 in 3 of us, and it costs more than $1 trillion each year. So what we do is we've decided to systemically tackle cancer care by essentially doing 3 things: having a digital oncology platform that improves patient experience with digital self-management tools. And secondly, to have an integrated system where patients and physicians can communicate better with remote patient monitoring, particularly for side effects and toxicities. And finally, it's really the aggregated real-world evidence and the real-world insights that we use on the patient-centric point of view to support health organizations around the world. We're live in the UK and the US at the moment, as well as actually in the Netherlands, to improve patient outcomes. So it's essentially tackling the cancer value-based system from 3 different angles. And we've seen great results with that already, particularly here in the UK.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bouvells. Let me move now to Mette Dyberg, who is the founder, I think you're the inspirer, and CEO of MyMe. And you're on mute, the famous Zoom statement of the year, please.
Hello. So MyMe is a clinically validated program proven to reduce autoimmune disease symptoms in over 90% of members. We essentially built to take the guesswork out of autoimmunity. So we take and apply process optimization to your body. And in doing so, we essentially translate your body signaling, or that noise, into understanding by pinpointing the causality between what you do and how it affects your symptoms. MyMe's technology can help identify triggers in as little as 8 weeks, whereas the traditional approach can take 5 to 7 years. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mette. Thank you so much. Alison Holland, who is joining us actually from the UK, and I just want to note that many of our speakers and panelists and many of our honorees are actually from outside the United States right now. Alison is generally based in California, but because she wanted to make sure that we had good representation throughout Europe, she was kind enough to zip over to the United Kingdom. So Alison, thank you so much for joining us today. And you talk a little bit, please, about the work that you and Mediball are doing.
Well, thank you very much. We're honored to be in this illustrious company today. So Mediball is a digital decentralized clinical trials platform. As you mentioned in the opening remarks there, we all live within a very fragmented healthcare environment. And by allowing the unification of data collection, of information transfer, and options for sites, participants, clinicians, and physicians to participate in clinical trials in settings that don't require them to always be in a hospital, and can allow people choices about being anywhere in the world to access the same caliber of clinical trial access as a real point of healthcare delivery. So we're delighted to have scaled Mediball, very much so, accelerating over the last couple of years. And we are active with over 1 million participants on platform around the world in over 60 countries, and currently celebrating over 150 studies on platform.
Thank you so much. I think what you've just said and Dr. Albert said really speaks to the global application of this, and certainly what Mette Dyberg said. Disease is not located in one nation. It's not bound by geography. The needs are truly, truly global. So thank you for those comments. Matthew Leclerc-Chavette, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Therapixel. Tell us a little bit about what you and Therapixel are doing.
Well, at Therapixel, we just do one thing. We take care of the breast screening systems and programs across the world. And we're providing a second pair of eyes to the radiologists, who are very often very alone, making this very difficult decision. And they basically have to face a needle in a haystack problem, having to decide whether to recall the women for further exam. And because these screening programs are so important to catch the cancer on time and cure it 90% of the time, it is important that we make these programs as efficient as possible. And this is what we do with our product, which is a decision support system called MammoScreen.
Thank you so very much for that. And let me jump over now to Antoine Rodrigue, who's the CEO of Modjaw. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing. You're on mute, Antoine. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, of course. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of the company that I started with my cousin, who was a doctor, a dentist, Dr. Maxime Gesson. So he had this brilliant idea of bringing the jaw motion into play into the dental world. So now the jaw motion, I mean, dentistry should be all about static and dynamic data. And by taking all these two together, we are bringing solutions to get cost effective and to gain up to 25% of efficiency within treatments. And so now we are closer to the reality of the patient. We are actually getting patients really customized prosthetics at the end of the day. So the company is now operating in 27 countries, and the success is has been confirmed over the past 2 years.
Thank you, Mark Julien. Share with us, please, what you and Dialoop are doing. By the way, I want to congratulate you for being here. You have been part of Galien. This is not the first year. This is actually a return year of acknowledgement for what you and the company are doing. I congratulate you again. It's a very special moment for me. I had the pleasure of being on a virtual webinar with you last year. And it's a privilege to be with you once again. Tell us about what you and the company have been doing.
Right. So thank you very much for this very, very kind word, Jill, and for Galien to allow us to be part again to this very unique moment. Really, Dialoop is developing an artificial intelligence-based personalized solution to improve clinical outcome for people with diabetes, type 1 and type 2, while revealing, their constant mental burden of managing their disease. Basically, a patient with diabetes will take over 100 medical decisions per day. And what we do is we replace those decisions, and every 5 minutes our technology will provide the patients with the right amount of insulin that the patient needs, and with machine learning and auto learning systems, and which will personalize the decision making to the actual physiology of the patient. And this year we are extremely proud because we have more than now several thousand of patients across Europe that are actually using our solution. And we have now 3 countries that are paying for the solution, Netherlands, Switzerland, and France is now paying specifically our artificial intelligence to provide those solutions to patients.
Congratulations for that. One of the challenges we face in this community is the challenge of customer mindfulness and reimbursement, and you and your colleagues have broken through that. You also point to the vast difference between Europe and the United States. So I want to kick off with a question, and I want to direct this initial question to Drs. Albert and Dr. Brunvels. I started off in my comments talking about how digital health is such a hot topic, and now we see billions of investment dollars flowing into the category. But, I think that skepticism about the category is like an ocean. It's filled with tears of entrepreneurs who have been crushed by the system, by people saying, I'm not really sure if this is of value to us or not. If I could ask you, because you're both seasoned entrepreneurs and scientists, clinicians who had a vision, how have you dealt with a culture, a system culture, not necessarily the medical culture, but a system culture that is slow to change And I'm going to ask Dr. Albert that you kick off, and Dr. Bouvels, listen closely to the answer, because I have a tendency to change my question for the next person coming in, give a little spin on it based upon the first answer. Dr. Albert, I mean, you mentioned that you're like one of the veterans of digital health. You've been there since 2011. What happened in 2011? What happened now? Has there been a shift or a reason why you and Livecore are so successful?
Yeah, Gail, we proved the value in the way that medicine requires proof. So as I said, we have 175 peer-reviewed publications in I was just gave 2 talks at the European Society of Cardiology Digital Summit 2 days ago. And I'm a reviewer at the American College of Cardiology and the Heart Rhythm Society. I graduated from medical school in 1981, Duke Medical School, a long time ago. And I've been in medical technology for over 35 years. And we always had to prove, not just for regulators, the FDA, to get CE mark, but we had to prove, most importantly, for the physicians and the patients, that what we provide offers true value. And I think, you know, if you're a young person from technology, those seem like incredible barriers: the FDA, CE mark, clinical trials, IRBs, consent forms. But they are the barrier that is necessary, because we're dealing with humans' lives and humans who are very vulnerable because they're sick. So I would tell you, our solution has been prove your value in the way that has always been the mechanism of proof: clinical evaluation, clinical validation.
Well, you know, I appreciate that answer, because I know a lot of medical technologies in the United States get payer pushback under the term investigational. And your dedication to the science is an insight I hope all our listeners are taking away from that. Dr. Bouvels, you also are a digital health and technology pioneer, and you know, obviously making sure that that your ideas from PX Healthcare are integrated into the system is paramount. How do you help people if they don't have access to the technology? How do you pick up on what Dr. Albert said?
Dr. Albert made some fantastic comments, because I can only echo that generating an evidence base for your technology is paramount. It is very important, not just for the regulators and for the health organizations you work with, but also for the patients. There is so much out there. There are more than 350,000 health apps in the app stores, and we are one of them. But fortunately, we're fully evidence-based, CE marked. We've been approved by several medical authorities, and we're listed in the top 25 of all health apps by some large organizations like IQVIA. But what's truly important is that you make something that patients really need as well. So just as an example, so we've been live in the UK for 5 years. We only released in the US this year in June, and in July we released some media information, and in that month we had 60,000 people going to our breast cancer website to understand why apps like OWISE are so important. And so what we really feel is super important is to make sure that what you generate is helpful for patients. So even today, I saw a comment, because we're obviously active on social media, which is really super busy at the moment because it's breast cancer month. And then patients say, please go to OWISE, because they provide the information. And then the app has personalized information based on the guidelines. So we would love to release worldwide, but we base it on the NCC guidelines in the US and on the NICE guidelines in the UK, because we're evidence-based and because we need to rely on what is allowed in a country and how to inform patients best. And the integration in the electronic patient records is, again, one key feature that we've recognized. We do plenty of workshops, not just with patients, but also with clinicians. And it's particularly the nurses who just simply don't have the time to open up another web browser tab or to open up another application. So we said, let's make sure we integrate directly with the interoperable features that OWISE has into the electronic patient records such as Epic, Cerner, Allscripts, and what have you. So this way, it's with a single click, the safety and toxicity data in real time from patients, if they share it with the hospitals, and if the hospitals have decided to integrate, it's there. So it's make sure that the patients really want what you're developing, and then let the patients drive the innovation as well. And that's what we find is really powerful.
So let's hold that for a second. I just want to summarize for a moment what you and Dr. Albert said, because I think that for our listeners and those that will see this webinar as it's presented online, you shared three essential points: the science, peer review, make sure that it's abundant and dedicated to the science. And then Dr. Bruvels, you talked about guidelines and making sure that it is representative of the needs of the consumer, of the patient community. I want to switch over. I think Meta, this is speaking obviously to what you and Mark are very much connected to. And Meta, I hope you don't mind my saying, you've shared publicly before that you straddle both the role of CEO and patient advocate. And I think that that's sort of a critical part of the company's identity. And Mark, you're talking about probably one of the biggest non-communicable health concerns of the world, diabetes. So I wanted to ask you about a particular question. I'm going to start, Meta, with you, and I'm going to ask Mark to weigh in. Look, digital health is all about engaging people. Dr. Bruvels just touched on that. It's not that just build it and they will come. You've got to make sure it's relevant for them to be there. So I wanted to ask you, what are you doing to make that possible? I mean, what's your recommendation for our listeners today to make your platform meaningful to those that you intended to be accessed by? How do you measure progress? Or better yet, how do you measure this in terms of lives improved? Meta, let me start with you, please.
So obviously, having lived through this myself, it was extremely important for us to create something that didn't just sort of improve a little bit, but we fundamentally talk about reclaiming lives. We talk about people who have given up working, who's given up being able to do the most basic things. And because of the way that we're able to sort of peel back and reverse disease symptoms, we can actually prove out that within the first 8 weeks, people are able to have benefit in their day-to-day life. So when quality of life metrics come back good, and like we have been able to prove in severe systemic lupus that we could reduce fatigue, which is one of the main complaints, by 87%, that's a number on a piece of paper. But in reality, if it means that all of a sudden you can cook for your family, you can pick up your kids from school, then it's game changing, right? And I think that's the important part for us, is that on paper, it looks like an app that's connected with some clinicians helping you going forward. But in the day-to-day lives of the individual, who a lot of them have had, let's say, 100 different rules intermittently cheating on them because they didn't know what worked. MyMe can pinpoint the exact trigger that set their immune system off and caused them to have this sort of gap in their life.
Wow, thank you for that. And Mark, look, sort of taking from what Meta just shared, you also have to create a sense of measurement and value, particularly because you're dealing with government reimbursement and succeeding. You've had to demonstrate results. And go off mute, please, Mark. But what's your secret of sort of engaging people and making it work and using that to make sure that it's accessible?
Well, I think at the heart of it is the patient. And what we've done is we actually co-developed the solution with the patient and the doctors. And we have included, since the very beginning, the patients into helping us design what they really need in terms of tools to help them go through through their journey. The other thing also, of course, is that 20% of our staff is actually connected one way or another to the disease, to diabetes. Now, the thing is, which is quite interesting and a bit like Meta, the patients today are expert of their, of their diabetes and their own diabetes. And what actually we're doing is to make sure that they forget about it now, and they can live, their life without, having to worry about the diabetes. And so this is quite of a, an interesting conundrum, where by caring for patients, we actually ask them to forget about their disease. And the other thing also, what we do is when we work with doctors, what we try to make sure is that they understand that 90% or 80% of the patient with this system will be treated correctly without their intervention, which means that will free for them time for the more needed patients. And actually, we're not taking away some knowledge and some actions towards the patient, but actually we're freeing their time so that they can actually spend more time with the patients that need more of their knowledge and intelligence to help them go further to better treat them and their diabetes. So that's what the importance of understanding what's the needs of the patients and understanding the needs of the doctors to make sure that the system will be well adopted by the overall system.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm going to swing over, since we're really talking about engaging people in new ways and making them feel participatory. Alison, I want to swing over to you for a moment, and thank you for going off mute, and ask you a sort of a probing question. We still feel that we're part of this COVID-19 era, and certainly at the very beginning of COVID-19, we saw drug development ground to a halt. We saw neurology trials practically disappear from the scene. We saw a decrease in cancer trial enrollment by about 45%. Usually it's a high priority category. People were frightened about coming into academic medical centers or trial sites. We saw the advent of telehealth and remote patient care rise. We see it somewhat shrinking back now in terms of state policies and so forth. I wanted to get your read. We've often talked about, and I even mentioned, let's invite the patient to the table. And I think each of our speakers right now have talked about the fact that if the person we're seeking to help is not part of the conversation, they're not going to embrace the solution. And you and your colleagues are trying to do something totally different from the industry that many of us grew up in, which is the clinical research organization, the historic CRO model. You're evolving it quickly to a different place. Diversity and inclusion, use of different technologies, embracing partnerships around the world, and so forth. I have a two-part question for you. One is, why did all of you feel bold enough to take a system that has been built over decades and say, you know what, we think the system needs a reboot, not disrupted. It needs just a evolutionary step on the pedal. That's one part of the question. The other part of the question is, okay, if I look at open up the black box called Mediball, what magic do I find inside that box that's meaningful and might impact all the people who are in this category?
Well, thank you. Very good questions for us. And I think when we look at the clinical trials industry, as you say, we cannot afford to allow that cycle to stop, because there are desperately needed indications all around the world that don't have sufficient therapeutic benefit and therapeutic solutions yet. So we have to keep that wheel moving. But when we look at what's been happening, the complexity of study designs, the number of endpoints, the amount of data being collected has just grown exponentially over the last 20 years. Dr. Ken Getz has some delightful data around that to demonstrate it. But what we were looking at Mediball is to say, well, listening to our patients who want to know about the clinical trial in the first place, to even be aware of it, to then have choices about how to participate in that study that fit in with their day-to-day lives, that don't require the mother with the young children to always have to find daycare, or the carer who's got a sick parent at home to have to find cover, to be able to go and travel 30 miles to get to the hospital and wait and participate. So how could we break down those barriers? There have been some beautifully designed technologies across the industry for many years. What we set out at Mediball to do is to have a single unified platform where those all come together into a single unified experience for the patient, their caregiver, the clinicians, the study nurses, and all of the myriad of participants who are required to execute a clinical trial safely around the world. And so we really looked at what does it take to not push the burden elsewhere, but to really change the dynamic and change the paradigm of how we design, build, and execute clinical trials by putting it in the hands, digital hands of our patients around the world. And we've seen over 10,000 patients with age-related macular degeneration, so that's 65 years and older generally, people who all participated in a clinical screening program. We've seen patients switch during COVID from an on-site to a remote access and give us 90% satisfaction ratings of appreciation of the choices about how to participate. We're not saying decentralized has to be every time, but to give people those choices and allow people, as we all use different technologies in our day-to-day lives, to become more familiar with utilizing those to get better healthcare and better access.
Yeah, thank you for that. You know, the concept of change of a system, you know, sort of we're I've always believed that culture squashes innovation, unfortunately. And I think that one of the great things about Galien and about each of you and your companies is courage and persistence and passion and the willingness to engage a set culture. And I wanted to ask Matthew and Antoine a unique question. Both of you are very much involved in engaging in culture or cultures that have been set through decades and decades, and you're bringing in new ideas and innovation, whether it's radiology or dentistry. The sense of people sort of saying, you know, this is the way I've done it for decades, since the dawn of the X-ray, right? Since this is where I've done it. And both of you, you know, different areas clinically, obviously, of the body, and yet bringing in whether it's 4D sort of assessment of jaw motion, taking a look and bringing in information to help radiologists make life impacting decisions about breast cancer treatment, next steps diagnostically. I wanted to ask each of you if you would share a little bit of what questions you're asked as innovators, as game changers, as innovators, and share with us what your remedy is to address some of those challenges. Matthew, let me start with you, please.
Yeah, that cannot be a better question for me. Thank you, Gail. Actually, I've spent my career trying to introduce new medical technology to the world, and so I've faced many times the issue of having a lot of doctors very keen on innovation and technology and not willing to change their habits. So that's the big conundrum for me. So the way we pass this hurdle with Therapixel is we've made sure that we ask them as little effort as possible to benefit from the technology. So that's, for instance, we don't ask them a single click additional to their current workflow. We don't change actually anything in their current workflow. So they have really no excuse to adopt to not adopt the technology we're providing them. The other thing is we immediately add a very broad vision for our product, and instead of being a French company, and the company was funded in Nice, so very pleasant Côte d'Azur, but we choose immediately to look to the world. And actually we realized that the biggest value proposition we had, the biggest added value of our product was in the US. So that's why we focused immediately on the US, and this is our main market. So that's why Prix Galien US is for us a great opportunity to be on the map as we are still early in our market developments. But that's the two things, you know, on the one hand, you know, don't change any habits that doesn't have to be changed. Just bring the innovation the purest way to the doctors or to those who would benefit. The second thing, find the right place to deliver your innovation, because it might not be in your home country.
That's very good insight for our listeners today. Thank you. And Antoine, I wanted to tweak my question a little bit for you. I've always found dentistry to be a profession of innovation. You know, I know many dentists, they have an expression, when in doubt, upgrade. And that's often been their mantra, you know, sort of panoramic dental scans, you know, even how people make night guards has changed through the years from these big molds where they used to stick sort of like clay into your mouth. Dentistry is a profession of innovation and technology. Have you found that to be the case? And if that is the case or not, how do you sort of swing into getting the community to embrace what you and your colleagues are doing?
Yeah, I think so. Dentistry has been is a very exciting industry because the number of innovation that comes to the market always shows that there is a thrill, there is a big interest in getting a better outcome for the patient and closer to personalized treatments. Also, what drives also the market for innovation is this will to go much faster, to be more efficient. And actually, when I was coming from a very different industry, where, I mean, this industry was very initial. I mean, this industry was extremely efficient in the way it works. It worked. Now, going into dentistry, then you actually realize, yes, it's amazing. There is an amazing amount of technologies that are coming up. Now, there are still ways to actually bring new things, a new dimension. So that's exactly what we had in mind. So technically, it's a little bit like you feeling to reach out to your patient and to be able to get him fully personalized treatment in a very efficient manner. You really need to digitalize the patient to get his digital twin in a way, so that all the information that you grasp in the first place, you use it to actually get a real personalized diagnostic and then a real personalized treatment. And this is where, you know, what is exciting is because you still feel there is that type of innovation, you know, that is here to change the entire industry, because it's a little bit like going from picture to video. So right now you're just bringing a new dimension. Oh, okay, so you need to think everything differently. And this is what we're bringing, and this is what has been very exciting also our users, because yeah, they are actually becoming innovators themselves, in order to to create new workflows, in order to treat the patient in a better way. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I want to ask each of you a question. You know, I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So a very quick answer on this. But, you know, digital health, I started to write about digital health in 1995, 1996. You know, and of course that is almost pre-internet. It's called the World Wide Web at that point, but it's pre-internet era, and I was writing about this. So I'm assuming that you all didn't sort of either get out of medical school or engineering school or business school and said, oh, I'm going to go into digital health. Of course, it was a discipline that evolved over time. So I wanted to ask each of you in a sentence, literally a sentence, what was the spark that said, I need to go and focus on this? Dr. Albert, you said like, hey, I'm one of the pioneers, or the company is certainly the pioneer. You have a lot of runway ahead of you, of course, but what was the from medicine into digital health. What was that? I'm going into digital health.
Connecting patients directly to their caregivers. And the tool that is now the gateway of healthcare literally around the world. Taking advantage of this, basically almost everyone here, whether you're a physician, whether you're a patient, that was the insight.
Thank you for that. Dr. Bruvels, what happened between medical school and PX Healthcare?
Was actually School of Pharmacy. I'm so sorry. I only wish I was a medic. No, very close to that.
By the way, we have many doctors, but only one pharmacist generally. So it's a very important relationship. And as a member of the American Pharmacists Association, please, there's no need to make any excuses whatsoever.
It's an interesting question because for me, it was really, I had previously set up a personalized medicine company in central nervous system disorders, and there was a lot of genetics and genomics involved. And after that, I joined the European Personalized Medicine Association, which is the equivalent of the Personalized Medicine Coalition in the US. I joined it as their executive director, and very quickly I realized that there are amazing personal diagnostic tools, amazing new personalized and targeted treatment out there, but that particularly cancer patients, because they receive a lot of these new technologies and treatments, that they are really in a maze of very complex information. So for me, it came out of patient need, and indeed that sort of joined together with the first sort of smartphones coming out, actually back in 2010, 2011, when the iPad just came about. It's like, wow, even for people who are less digitally literate, it is possible now to access this by just pressing the right buttons and giving some answers. We can really help them find a way and help them prepare for these conversations with their doctors, because we knew already at that time that people are generally not very self-efficacious. And by prompting them with the right questions to ask, they can really elevate their level of treatment and make sure they get the right treatment and also at the right time.
Thank you. Meta, I think that your life journey probably was a huge influence, but I think there was more to it. You know, many people have a challenge that they face. Few people take that challenge and operationalize it. So let me ask you a twist to the question I've been asking. What made you feel like you weren't going to be a bystander, you were going to be an ambassador for the patient community operationally?
Yeah, so I should clarify, I'm an economist, not a doctor. And I think that was a very big reason for why I took the path I did, right? I had been diagnosed with 6 autoimmune conditions by the age of 30. You know, I saw numerous doctors, was heavily medicated, and nothing helped me. And so when I was told that I had great news awaiting, and then my doctor's team proceeded to tell me I wasn't going to die in the immediate future, I sort of switched from being a disempowered patient to being an empowered human being. And I think that switch for me was really the moment where it became very clear that if I didn't do something myself, I probably wasn't going to have the long life that I had set out to. And so for me, it was really applying process optimization. Knowing nothing about healthcare, I turned to the things that I understood. And so by turning my life into numbers, and this was just about the time where quantified self was also sort of booming in the US, it became clear that we could actually pinpoint these triggers and create a completely different understanding of the autoimmune space. And I think rethinking often means, you know, applying things from adjacent spaces to a new space.
Thank you. I just want to mention that Meta also is the host of a weekly Clubhouse chat room that deals with the struggles of startup innovators. And I know your next 5 guests on the show are right here. So I would recommend that you write to them and secure them for the weeks ahead. You've got a star-studded panel for all your Clubhouse listeners. Allison, you started at one end of the industry, you moved into this. Mediball is a relatively new enterprise filled with a pioneering spirit. What I want to understand for our audience today, what was the jump to Mediball? all those senior people were very successful before Mediball. Why Mediball?
Well, I've spent 25 years plus working in clinical trials, both at site, academia, and industry, and really saw that there was potential to change the paradigm, to break down those timeframes and to improve the accessibility and engagement. And then I met Dr. Michelle Longmire. Our CEO is quite inspirational. She's one of the most phenomenally inspiring people in the world. She is a practicing dermatologist from Stanford, and in her clinical practice and her research practice was frustrated that she couldn't join all of the pieces of information and data about her patients together in one place to be able to make effective decision-making in real time, particularly when she was working with rare patients who maybe didn't live or didn't reside in a location close to her. And so Mediball is entirely born from that frustration and thinking there's a different way and a better way in which we can gather information, unify it together, and use it to make better decisions in real time, whether we're face-to-face or remote, and be able to replicate and amplify that around the world to change the course and the pace of the way medicines are developed.
Thank you, Alice. And Mark, I want to swing over to you because I know that you and your colleagues are so passionate about people who have metabolic concerns, diabetes. That is a condition that has been radically changed through innovation. Whether it was initially the diabetes, the insulin pump itself, or blood glucose monitoring that communicated with the pump. Diabetes is a condition of innovation, requires innovation to put diabetes in the background and remain healthy. But before you stepped into the role as CEO of the company, what made you feel like I have to do this? What was the personal life-changing moment for you?
I mean, I think really the understanding that even more than digital health, more artificial intelligence can start transforming the health industry from average medicine for an average patient to personalized treatment for a specific patient. And that ability to move from an average solution for something that would be designed as an average patient, which doesn't exist at all. Each patient is extremely unique with their, and especially in diabetes, with their own physiology, with its own issues, and having the ability through artificial intelligence and all the different tools that are embedded in artificial intelligence to transform this solution to a precision medicine, personalized medicine, to treat and help patients with their condition was actually, to me, the trigger that said, well, this is something very unique, and I need to help Diaboloop develop so that everybody around the world can access that sort of technology.
Thank you for that. That's insightful. Matthew, you're involved in an area of complexity. I heard your introductory comments and my pulse started to pick up a little bit. Probably Dr. Albert, and as a cardiologist, was concerned for my well-being. It wasn't quite tachycardic, but the sense of a woman who gets a unusual breast scan, a lot's riding on that. But what happened before Therapixel? What were you doing, and why Therapixel?
That has been quite a long journey. I mean, to some extent, we know the innovation in medicine is very incremental. So it took me a long incremental journey until I can finally do something a bit more disruptive. But again, disruptive without disrupting the way doctors work. And finally, by this obsession of simplifying the access to the technology and not being obsessed by the technology, but what it actually delivers, the value the technology delivers to the doctors and to the patient, as I said in my introduction. We do all that because we think that many women will benefit from this. I mean, we estimate that if Therapixel mammoscreen was used in the US for every 40 million scan that is done annually, we would find 100,000 more cancers early that have a chance to be cured. So that's the sort of impact we can have on the population. And that's what really motivated me. I mean, on the personal note, I lived abroad for the last 20 years. And when I was approached by Therapixel, I said, yes, this is it. I need to get back to my home country to help this company go to the world. So that's my deep motivation here.
Thank you for that. I feel, I'm going to ask Antoine a tweak of this question, but I feel in each of you, your passion to help people. What's coming across is, not your titles and not your executive roles in leading great Prix Galien selected finalists. That obviously speaks to your successes, but I hope our audience feels, most importantly, the passion that you have for this work and how it can improve the human condition. Antoine, MaJaw is sort of a dream, an enterprise that you helped found. What was happening before MaJaw that made you feel like, I need to go in this direction? It's a very edgy, the concept of 4D technology is totally new. Why?
Well, I mean, I think again, I think that when you look at what you can bring on the table, actually you start realizing it can go global. It is of a global scale for the patient. It's not like as in you are going to treat only patients within your country. So it's like, okay, you redefine the rules. You are going to redefine the way things works. Because now you have this one more dimension. And also at the same time, you are putting back the patient in the middle of, in control of what it is really, because you offer him a way to show him, a way for him to show and to point the finger on what he was trying to say in a very difficult way, like before, because you say, oh, it's painful and so on. So now that you have the visual, now that you have this dynamic digital twin, you know exactly, as a patient, you know exactly what's happening, and so you are getting more you are accepting more and more your treatment. So it's also that is very exciting, because you get to have the patient involved a lot more into his treatment, and you feel is going to change. Definitely, it's going to change the way patients are going to experience their clinical, their dental treatments.
Thank you. No, I wish we could go on with this conversation at the minimum for another half an hour, but for hours. And I'm looking forward to seeing many of you on Thursday, greeting you personally at the gala itself. I want to congratulate each of you and your companies, your colleagues. I want to also acknowledge the people that you're helping. I know that that's really the driving force for you personally and your companies. To be a Galien, Prix Galien finalist is a big deal, And on the behalf of the Galien community, I want to acknowledge you. It's very, very special. Let me just quickly summarize a few points I heard today during the conversation that I think our audience, our listeners who see this webinar have to remember. As Dr. Albert reminded us, it's all rooted in the science. As Dr. Bruvel's really also reinforced, connect to the guidelines, connect to the practice of medicine. As we heard from Allison, it's be bold enough to invite people to participate in their own destiny of healthcare, of drug innovation. As we heard from Meta, it's about inventing for the sake of people who will use the platform. As we heard from Mark, innovation is not abstract. It's not disconnected from the people we seek to help. As we heard from Matthew, physicians, clinicians can only know so much. The eye can only be so keen. Artificial intelligence and technology are here to support great decision-making that sustains people's lives. As we heard from Antoine, the patient has to be personally involved in their destiny. This is fantastic. Before we close and say goodbye, I want to share with everyone the results of the poll that we took at the very beginning of the conversation. Again, I want to acknowledge as this poll is up, as we see, wow, you win. Widespread of patient-friendly digital and biosensors is the #1 aspect. Let's see if that is the entire week. I want to also acknowledge Bernard Pousseau, the chair of the digital health section, and of course, the chair of Galien, Bruno Cohen, who will be hosting us throughout Thursday. I thank them. I thank the Galien staff who work so hard on Innovation Week and these panels. Again, my thanks to you, our expert panel, to your companies, your colleagues, and to all the people you serve. Good luck. Looking forward to seeing you Thursday. A bientôt.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.